The wine in her glass hadn't stopped trembling. Not from nerves, but from rage across the dining table. Malene Royce's diamond bracelet clinked softly as she leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "You think exposing me will save you." Her smile faltered. "You're not a hero, Alina. You're a phase and phases end." Alina didn't flinch. Instead, she slid her phone across the table on screen, timestamps, medical records, video footage, and a federal agent's signature. The silence that followed could drown a heartbeat. Then came the doorbell. Ryan opened it, and froze. "It's them," he said quietly, "the FBI. 3 days earlier I've saved more than 1,000 lives, but it only takes one envelope to ruin my career." The envelope was thick, too thick for good news. My name was printed in sharp black ink, centered like a target. I broke the seal slowly, not because I was afraid, but because something inside me already knew. My fingers trembled anyway. "License suspended, pending investigation for serious misconduct." The words blurred for a moment. I blinked hard, trying to make sense of the letter. My mind, trained for emergencies and split-second triage decisions, now couldn't process a simple sentence. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a blow, a calculated hit. I stared past the envelope toward the far corner of my office, where a single photo frame sat slightly tilted on the shelf. It was from my medical school graduation. Malene Royce, standing beside me, beaming as if I were her own daughter. That was before she decided I wasn't good enough for her son, before I became a threat. There was a knock, not the usual polite tap. This one was rushed, hesitant. Tessa Grant peeked her head in her cheeks, pale and eyes. Rimmed red. "Elena," she whispered, "can I come in?" I nodded, still gripping the letter like it might dissolve if I held on tighter. She shut the door quickly behind her. "People are talking," she said in the I nodded, still gripping the letter like it might dissolve if I held on tighter. Tessa shut the door quickly behind her, glancing nervously over her shoulder, as if expecting someone to follow. She leaned against the doorframe for a second, gathering her breath before speaking. "People are talking," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, as if the walls had ears. "It's all over the boardroom. They're saying the investigation is serious, that the administration is moving fast. Some are acting like it's already over for you." I blinked, the words landing heavy, but not unexpected. I'd spent my entire career preparing for emergencies, but not this, not betrayal from the inside. Tessa stepped closer, lowering her voice further. "And Malene, she's smiling." Like she knew this was coming, like she's been waiting for it. Of course she has, I thought bitterly. She didn't just want me gone. She wanted me destroyed, discredited so thoroughly that no one would ever trust me again. "She's telling everyone it's about patient care," Tessa continued, "that you crossed a line, that the board was unanimous." I closed my eyes for a moment, breathing through the ache in my chest. Unanimous. That word felt like a betrayal all its own, as if no one who once shook my hand or praised my work would even stand up for me now. "But nobody really believes it," Tessa added quickly, her words tumbling out as if she could pull me back from the edge. "Not really. People are scared, Alina, scared of her. scared of being next. I opened my eyes and looked at her. Really looked at her. Pale, anxious, but standing there anyway, offering what little courage she had left. "That's how it works," I said, my voice flat. "She isolates you, makes an example out of you." Tessa nodded miserably. "It's like you're already guilty. The whispering started this morning. Even people who used to admire you are keeping their distance now." I could feel it too, the slow unraveling of the world I'd built. Friends turning into shadows, trust evaporating like mist. That's how reputations die, not in explosions, but in silence, in the refusal to meet your eyes. In the backs turned in the hallway. I placed the letter on the desk, smoothing the creases with the palm of my hand like it could make it less real. "They used my name," I said quietly, "but not my work." Tessa hesitated, twisting the sleeve of her sweater. "I shouldn't say this, but she's been trying to push you out for a while. I've heard the way she talks about you, not just as a doctor, as a wife, as a mother." "Because I don't fold myself into the perfect little daughter-in-law mold," I snapped, harsher than I intended. Tessa flinched but didn't back away. "Because you're better than that. Because you care too much." A bitter laugh escaped me, a short, humorless thing. "If that's a crime, they should close the whole hospital." The room went still, heavy with the truth neither of us wanted to admit, that sometimes caring too much made you dangerous in a world built on keeping the wrong things quiet. I sat back in my chair, staring at the letter, at the life they were trying to erase with a few strokes of a pen. "What's the patient ID on the file?" I asked suddenly. Tessa blinked. "What?" "The letter cites a case," I said, already sitting up straighter. "A patient. I need the record." She hesitated, torn between loyalty and fear. "You're not supposed to—" "I'm not supposed to exist right now, Tessa," I cut in, voice sharp. "Help me anyway." For a moment she said nothing. Then, without another word, she moved to the computer, hands trembling as she logged into the hospital's secure system. I watched her pull up the file, my heart thudding painfully in my chest. One glance at the screen, and the first thread in the web they'd woven began to unravel. Tessa's fingers hovered over the keyboard before she finally clicked into the file. The patient's chart bloomed onto the screen. Neat, sterile rows of data, lab reports, prescriptions. I leaned forward, scanning quickly. The prescription was wrong. It wasn't mine. A high-dose sedative, the kind you reserve for acute cases, dangerous in the wrong hands. More than that, it was dated on a day I wasn't even working. I frowned, checking the schedule in my mind, double-checking my memory, and felt a cold knot form in my stomach. "I was off that day," I whispered. Tessa's hand froze over the mouse. "Are you sure?" "Positive. Ryan and I took the boys to the state park." "I have the photos to prove it." We stared at the screen in stunned silence as a second file popped up. Same date, different patient, another prescription, another falsified entry. Again, my name. Again, a drug I never prescribed. Again, my supposed signature, a perfect forgery, almost too perfect. My pulse quickened. My mouth went dry. "This isn't a bug," I muttered. "Someone tampered with the records, and I think I know who." Tessa turned to me, her face pale. "Alina, This is serious. This could be criminal. Records don't change themselves, I said grimly, but people with power and no conscience? They do. The server room wasn't meant for comfort. It hummed with low heat and the steady pulse of spinning drives. Lights blinked across black metal cabinets. A quiet, mechanical heartbeat. Luis Tron looked up from a terminal, his fingers hovering over the keys. "You sure you want to do this here?" he asked, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "If someone finds out I ran this for you, I'm sure," I said firmly. "You owe me. Remember?" Luis winced. A flash of memory between us. Late nights in med school, rotations we barely survived, the time I'd covered for him when he nearly failed trauma response. "Yeah, okay," he muttered, turning back to the screen. "But if this trail leads where I think it does..." Beside me, Tessa crossed her arms tightly, jaw clenched. "Then someone needs to follow it," she said. Luis sighed and began typing, a string of admin credentials flying across the screen. The terminal blinked, and a long list of login entries scrolled past, time-stamped and color-coded. "These are all system logins for the last 30 days, he explained. "Anything flagged after hours goes yellow. Suspicious activity turns red." The screen lit up, a crime scene in data form, red entries dotting the log like drops of blood. Tessa leaned closer. "Dr. Morrison's account?" Luis filtered the results. Five entries remained. Late at night, between 2:12 and 3:08 a.m., over a span of 2 weeks. "He's on sabbatical," I said, ice settling in my veins. "He hasn't touched a hospital computer in months." Luis nodded grimly. "Exactly. And the system doesn't lie. Someone used his credentials to access the patient record database from the boardroom terminal." "The boardroom?" Tessa repeated, her voice tight. Luis tapped a few keys. "IP address trace. Boom." "That's the MAC address tied to the executive terminal. Only 3 people have access to that room after hours." I didn't need to ask who one of them was. Luis looked at me carefully. "You want me to show you the keycard logs?" I nodded once. A second screen popped up, showing keycard swipes, dates, times, names. One name repeated, again and again. Malene Royce. October 2nd, October 4th, October 6th. Tessa's breath caught audibly. "I saw her that night," she whispered. "I was pulling a double. I saw her walking out of the east wing toward the server hallway. I thought she was checking on renovations." "She wasn't," I said. "She was covering her tracks." Luis hesitated, then leaned forward. "There's one more thing." He clicked into the security archives, pulled a timestamp, October 4th, 2:19 a.m., and hit play. The footage flickered to life, grainy, black and white. A small figure moved quickly down the east corridor. Blurry, but unmistakable. A designer trench coat, impossibly straight posture, heels clicking sharply on the tile. Luis slowed the footage, paused, zoomed in slightly on the shoes. "Dior," Tessa murmured. "Malene has those in 3 colors." I stared at the screen, my hands slowly curling into fists. She did it. She logged in under Morrison's name. She altered the records. She framed me. Luis leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "If she did this, it's not just personal. It's criminal," I finished for him. A thick, electric silence filled the room. A crossroads, one I knew we couldn't turn away from. I wanted to save my career, but what I found could save hundreds of patients. I stared at the frozen frame on the screen. the evidence glaring back at me. Everything I had worked for, everything they were trying to erase, now I had proof. But proof meant nothing if it stayed hidden. Luis turned to me, voice low. "What do you want to do now?" I inhaled slowly, feeling the gravity of the decision settle in my chest. There was no coming back from this, no middle ground where I could salvage comfort or familiarity. Malene Royce hadn't just attacked my career. She'd attacked the foundation of everything I believed in. "We build the case," I said quietly. "We gather everything, patient records, timestamps, security logs, login histories. We get it airtight." Luis nodded, already typing commands into the system to begin encrypting and downloading the files. Tessa leaned in closer, her voice trembling but resolute. "Alina, are you sure you want to go up against her? People have tried before. They disappeared, silently, their reputation shattered. I'm not them," I said, steady. "I won't disappear quietly." Tessa hesitated, then gave a short nod, her decision made. She was with me, however this ended. Luis finished copying the data onto a secure drive. "This is enough to get attention," he said. "But you'll need more: testimonies, patterns, financial records." I thought about every uneasy glance, every whispered doubt that had passed between staff in hushed tones in the hospital hallways. People knew. They were just too afraid to speak. But fear only lasts until one person dares to break it. "There's someone who might help," I said. "Dr. Patel." Tessa frowned. "Patel? He left 3 years ago. Nobody's heard from him since." "He didn't leave," I corrected her. "He was forced out, after raising concerns about the private wing's billing practices. I'll find him." Luis handed me the drive, the small piece of plastic heavier than it should have been. "You'll need protection," he said. "Legal. Maybe even federal." "I know someone," I replied. Tessa looked between us, her uncertainty plain. "If you're wrong, if this backfires—" "I won't be the only one who falls," I said. "Malene built her kingdom on forged records and inflated bills. It's time someone turned on the lights." I pocketed the drive and stood, feeling a surge of grim determination. Outside the server room, the hospital continued on as if everything were normal. But normal was just the lie they told to keep everyone quiet. Not anymore. Then 2 days later, I sat in a dimly lit cafe in downtown Brooklyn, a place where people went to be forgotten. A man in a worn leather jacket and thick glasses slid into the seat across from me. Older, grayer, but still sharp. Dr. Patel. "I wondered when someone would come," he said. No small talk, no pretense. I kept quiet because I thought I was alone. But I was wrong, wasn't I? I placed the drive on the table, sliding it toward him. "We have proof." "I need your help." Patel picked up the drive, turning it in his hands like it might explode. "How bad is it?" "Bad," I said. "Worse than anyone imagined. We have altered records, inflated procedures, forged signatures. Patients were hurt, careers were destroyed." His jaw tightened. "And Malene? At the center of it all." Patel let out a breath, a sharp, bitter sound. "She's untouchable. She has the board in her pocket, the trustees, the donors." The hospital protects her because she protects the money. Not anymore, I said. We're going federal. His eyes sharpened. You're serious. Dead serious. He nodded once, a slow, deliberate motion. Then so am I. The next step was delicate. We couldn't just walk into the FBI without a plan. Luis set up an encrypted channel to a contact he had, a special agent known for handling internal corruption cases. His name was Michael Greer. We sent the first batch of files through the secure link, redacted, carefully labeled, every line of metadata intact. Within hours, we got a reply. Meet me. Tomorrow. Discretion is paramount. Tessa, Luis, and Patel sat around my kitchen table that night, the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the only background noise as we made our plan. You know this could ruin you completely, Patel said. It could ruin all of us, Tessa added. She already tried to ruin me, I said. This time, I'm choosing the battlefield. Luis leaned back in his chair. If Greer takes this, it's not just her that'll go down. The hospital, the board, donors, maybe even politicians. She's built too many alliances. I thought of Malene, her smug smile at the dinner table, the glass of wine trembling slightly in her hand, not from fear, but from fury. They thought they were untouchable, I said. They thought they could rewrite the truth and no one would fight back. I glanced at the stack of files, the flash drive, the silent strength of the people sitting with me. But they forgot something, I continued, voice steady. Tessa tilted her head. What? I smiled, not out of joy, but of resolve. The truth doesn't vanish. It waits, and when it's ready, it doesn't knock. It breaks the door down. The next morning, the city was cloaked in a gray mist, the kind that blurred the edges of buildings and muffled the noise of traffic. I arrived early at the small cafe in Brooklyn, the kind of place where conversations disappeared beneath the clink of coffee cups and the hiss of steamers. Agent Michael Greer was already there, seated in a corner booth with a clear view of the door. No sunglasses, no tailored suit, just a plain gray sweater and a sharp, assessing gaze. He looked like someone who preferred to work in the shadows, who trusted silence more than promises. He didn't stand as I approached. Just nodded once and gestured to the seat across from him. You came alone, he said, his voice low but firm. I don't bring people I can't trust, I replied, sliding into the booth. He studied me for a moment, not my face, but my posture, my hands, the set of my shoulders, evaluating, measuring risk. I reviewed the files you sent, he said, tapping a closed folder on the table between us. Login records, financial trails, patient data, altered signatures, forged authorizations. You've been thorough. I had to be, I said quietly. Greer leaned back slightly. Hospitals are fortresses, hard to penetrate, even harder to prosecute. You're aware of what you're stepping into? I nodded. If this goes public before we're ready, they'll bury you, he warned, destroy your credibility, drag you through a counter-investigation. Maybe worse. I know, I said. Greer tilted his head. Why do it? I looked out the window for a moment. The city moved on as if nothing was happening, as if truth and lies weighed the same. Because if I don't, I said finally, it will happen again, and not just to me. Greer nodded once, decisive. Good answer. He pulled the folder closer, flipping it open. Inside were printed copies of some of the evidence I had sent, annotated in tight handwriting. "We'll start quietly," he said. "Witness interviews, financial audits, subpoenas. We'll need people willing to testify, people inside." "I have them," I said. "More are ready to come forward. They're just scared." Greer's mouth curved slightly, not a smile exactly, but something close. "Fear is good. It means they know what's at stake." He closed the folder, sliding it back into his bag. "You're going to be the face of this, Dr. Alina," he said. "If we move, you'll be named, publicly. Are you ready for that kind of attention?" I thought about the whispering hallways, the cold stares, the empty smiles. "I was framed in the dark," I said. "Let them see me in the light." Greer chuckled, a dry, approving sound. He stood, extending a hand. "Then let's take them down." I shook his hand, feeling the weight of what was coming settle around me. No turning back now. Over the next few weeks, the investigation moved quietly but steadily. Subpoenas were issued. Financial records disappeared from hospital archives, only to reappear, reconstructed from encrypted backups and whistleblowers' private files. The deeper Greer and his team dug, the worse it got. Malene Royce wasn't just manipulating patient records. She was orchestrating an entire network of fraudulent billing, kickbacks from suppliers, and favors traded for political donations. Her fingerprints were everywhere, hidden in plain sight. One by one, the cracks began to show. Board members resigned under vague explanations. Donors withdrew their funds citing ethical concerns. Whispers became murmurs, murmurs became conversations. And Malene? She remained calm on the surface, attending charity galas, hosting hospital fundraisers, but behind closed doors, the walls were crumbling. It all led to one final evening, an invitation, unexpected but not surprising. Dinner at the Royce estate. I stared at the email on my phone for a long time before replying. "Of course," I wrote. "Wouldn't miss it." Ryan hesitated as we pulled up to the estate, the tires crunching on the pristine driveway. "You don't have to do this," he said, voice low. "I do," I replied, stepping out of the car. The house glowed with a forced warmth, polished surfaces, manicured hedges, every detail curated to project power and grace. Malene greeted us herself at the door, a smile sharp enough to cut. "Alina," she said sweetly, "come in. I was hoping you'd still have the good sense to be civil." I stepped across the threshold, my heart steady, my mind clear. "Wouldn't miss it," I said. "Dinner with the woman who tried to erase me? Sounds unforgettable." The dining room shimmered under soft chandeliers. At the head of the table, a bottle of red wine sat breathing in a crystal decanter. Malene poured it slowly, deliberately, handing me a glass. "To new beginnings," she said. I didn't drink. "Let's not toast too soon," I replied. Malene set her glass down, folding her hands in a practiced, polished motion. "You know," she said, voice low and intimate, "this could all go away, quietly. No hearings, no courts, no disgrace. All you have to do is walk away." She leaned closer. "Drop the resistance. Sign the divorce quietly. Disappear. And I'll make sure your suspension disappears too." Her eyes glittered with the promise of easy escape, of the life I could still have if only I surrendered. I smiled, slow and certain. "You've always underestimated me," I said. "You see, I'm not the phase, Malene." I reached into my bag and slid my phone across the table. On the screen, audit logs, security footage, altered records, and a letter from the Bureau, signed by Greer. "You are." For the first time, Malene's mask cracked. The doorbell rang. Ryan stood slowly, glancing toward the hallway. "It's them," he said quietly. "The FBI." The courtroom was nothing like the ones you see on TV. No sweeping speeches, no dramatic gasps from the gallery. Just a cold, sterile room, lit too harshly by fluorescent lights that stripped away illusions and left only the truth behind. Malene Royce sat stiffly at the defense table. No designer heels today, no perfectly curated jewelry. Just a regulation beige suit that did nothing to hide the brittle tension in her frame. Her face, once a mask of effortless authority, was pale and drawn, her eyes glassy. She didn't look at me as the charges were read: wire fraud, insurance fraud, medical malpractice, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, count after count, charge after charge. When the judge finally spoke the word guilty, the air seemed to shift, not with cheers, but with the quiet exhalation of 100 invisible lungs holding their breath for too long. 5 others were convicted alongside her: board members, coders, administrators, the hidden architects of a decade-long empire built on greed and lies. Over 140 patients had been directly affected. Millions of dollars siphoned through inflated billing. Countless careers derailed, some destroyed entirely. And yet, somehow, in that moment, I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel vindication. I felt peace. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, microphones shoved toward me, a cacophony of shouted questions. "Dr. Alina, do you have any comment on today's verdict? Did you ever think you'd see justice served? What's next for you?" I paused at the steps, the winter wind biting at my skin. For a moment, I simply breathed, the cold sharp and real in my lungs. Then I turned to the crowd. "I didn't come here for revenge," I said, my voice steady. "I came here for the truth, and today, the truth won." I didn't wait for the next wave of questions. I simply turned and walked away, not running from the past, but walking steadily towards something new. Months passed. The hospital once shadowed by corruption was reborn. The engraved plaques with Malene's name were removed. The portraits of complicit board members were taken down. In their place, a new inscription was carved into the stone of the main entrance. "Here, truth is the first step to healing." I returned not as a doctor fighting for survival, but as the new head of emergency medicine. The system I helped design was transparent, accountable, human. No more secret authorizations, no more forged trails, every change logged, every billing justified. For the first time, the hospital wasn't just a place to treat broken bodies, it was a place to heal broken trust. Sometimes walking the halls, I catch glimpses, not of the past, but of what could have been lost. Young doctors, nurses, patients laughing quietly in waiting rooms, life moving forward. Sometimes, on my desk, I find small notes slipped between patient charts or emails sent after hours. Thank you for not giving up. You reminded us why we chose this profession. You showed us that courage saves lives, too. I never respond. I don't need to. Their words are enough. Ryan and I parted ways, not in anger, but in understanding. Some wounds take longer to heal. Some people need space to find their own way through the wreckage. And me? I found peace. Not in erasing the scars, but in carrying them. Quiet reminders that survival isn't about coming out unscathed. It's about standing when the storm has passed and knowing you didn't bend to it. One evening, as I left the hospital, I stood for a moment at the entrance, running my fingers over the words etched in stone. Here, truth is the first step to healing. I smiled, not out of triumph, but of something deeper, something earned. The truth doesn't shout. It waits. It endures. It dismantles. And in the end, no fortress built on lies can withstand its slow, relentless knock. Because the real victory was never about destroying the enemy. It was about rebuilding what they tried to take from me: dignity, truth, and the courage to move forward. And maybe, just maybe, the courage to start again. Boardroom. Malene was smiling like she knew this was coming. Of course, she knew. My voice cracked. She probably wrote the damn thing herself. Tessa winced. They say it was unanimous, but nobody believes it was about patient care. I placed the letter on the desk, smoothing the creases with my palm. They used my name, I said quietly, but not my work. Tessa hesitated. I shouldn't say this, but she's been trying to push you out for a while. I've seen how she talks about you, not just as a doctor, but as a wife, as a mother, because I don't fold myself into the perfect little daughter-in-law mold, I snapped. She thinks you're too ambitious. Tessa said that you care more about your patients than your family. I nearly laughed. If that's a crime, they should close the whole hospital. A silence settled between us, tense and sad. I could feel Tessa's pity, like a weight in the air. I didn't want it. I didn't need it. What's the patient ID on that file? I asked suddenly. Tessa blinked. What the letter? Cites a case, a patient. I need. The record? She hesitated, but then walked over to the monitor. I'm not supposed to exist right now, Tessa, I said flatly. Help me anyway. She logged in and pulled the file. I took one look and frowned. The prescription listed wasn't mine, a high-dose sedative dangerous, but more than that, it was dated on a day I wasn't even working. I was off that day, I whispered. Tessa froze. Are you sure? Positive. Ryan and I took the boys to the state park. I have the photos to prove it. We stared at the screen. A second file popped up. Same date, different patient. Again, my name, a drug. I never prescribed. A note signed in my handwriting, but I knew it wasn't mine. My pulse quickened. My breath shallowed. This isn't a bug. I mumbled. Someone tampered with the records, and I think I know who. Records don't change themselves, but people with power and no conscience do. The server room wasn't meant for comfort. It pulsed with low heat and the soft hum of humming drives, each click, and were a mechanical heartbeat. The light was low bluish, casting long shadows that made the wires look like veins, a place designed to store data, not truth. Louis Tran looked up from the terminal, his fingers hovering above the keys. "You sure you want to do this here?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder like someone might be watching. "If someone finds out I ran this for you." "I'm sure," I said. "You owe me, remember?" He winced, a flash of the past passing between us med school days, the time I covered for him during his rotations. The time he nearly failed out of trauma response. "Yeah, okay," he muttered. "But this trail, if it leads where I think it does," beside me. Tessa crossed her arms, jaw clenched. "Then someone needs to follow it." Louise sighed and typed in a string of admin credentials. The screen blinked, a long list of login entries, scrolled past time-stamped and color-coded. "These are all system login. For the last 30 days, he said anything. Flagged after hours goes yellow. Suspicious activity turns red." The screen glowed like a crime scene. Red entries dotted the log like drops of blood. Tessa leaned in Dr. Morrison's account. Louise filtered the results. 5 entries remained. I stared at them, each one tucked neatly between 212 and 38A. Over a 2-week span. He's on sabbatical. I said he hasn't touched a hospital keyboard in months. Luis nodded. "Exactly. And the system doesn't lie. Someone used his credentials to access the patient record database from the boardroom terminal." "The boardroom," Tessa repeated. Luis tapped the screen again. "IP address. Trace. Boom. That's the MAC address tied to the executive terminal. Only 3 people have access to that room outside business hours. I didn't need to ask who. One of them was." He turned the monitor. "You want me to show you the keycard logs?" I nodded. A second screen appeared, listing access swipes. One name repeated. Malene Royce, October 2nd. October 4th, October 6th. Tessa's breath caught. "I saw her that night. I was pulling doubles. Saw her walking out of the east wing toward the server hallway. I thought she was checking on renovations. She wasn't. I said she was covering her tracks." Luis hesitated. "There's one more thing." He opened. A third window selected the date, October 4th, 219A. And played the clip. Grainy black and white security footage flickered to life. A short figure entered from the east corridor. Moving briskly, the image was blurred, but the outline was unmistakable. Designer trench coat, impossibly straight posture, sharp heels clicking on tile. The figure stopped at the terminal, leaned in, and began typing. Luis slowed the footage. Pause right there, a still frame, fingers on the keyboard, a close-up of the shoes. "Dior," Tessa muttered. "I'd know those anywhere. Malene has them." In 3 colors, I stared at the image, my hands slowly curling into fists. "She did it," I said. "She logged in under Morrison's name, altered the records, framed me." Luis leaned back, exhaling hard. "If she did this, it's not just personal, it's criminal. I wanted to save my career. What I found might save hundreds of patients." The glow of my desk lamp flickered against the stack of drives and aging manila folders piled across the oak surface. Outside, the October wind scratched faintly against the window. But inside my home office, silence had weight. Each breath I took stirred dust from the past cases I had locked away. Not because I wanted to forget, but because something had always felt off. I slid open the bottom drawer and retrieved a small key from my necklace. The click of the lock was soft but final. A drawer full of contradiction files flagged as closed, yet never resolved in my mind. Patients who had come in with stomach pain and left with abdominal surgery, ones who arrived dehydrated and exited with thousands in billed procedures. Back then, I couldn't prove anything. I had no access, no support. Just instinct, but instinct keeps records. I booted up the encrypted backup drive and pulled up my private notes. Old consultation audio files, scans of intake forms, even photos of treatment boards that no longer match the digital history. My fingers trembled as I navigated case after case. One caught my attention. Patient X4329 routine. Gastro case notes clearly marked mild irritation. Recommend dietary follow-up, but the hospital billed for endoscopy, CT scans, and a 3-day private wing stay. My signature was on the digital order, except I never signed it. I checked the log's entry date, December 2019, time 1:03 a.m. Another, X22765, a child with suspected dehydration. Instead of rehydration therapy, the system showed a $14,000 billing trail for neurology scans and overnight observation. Again under my name, again dated when I was off duty. I leaned back in my chair, my hands clenched. This wasn't sloppiness, it was systemic. A network of altered records, inflated diagnosis, and falsified orders. The ER had become a pipeline, funneling simple cases into the private treatment wing, where every small issue turned into a 6F figure, your opportunity behind me. The door creaked. Ryan stepped in. Barefoot arms folded, his voice was soft. You're still at it? I didn't look at him, I found something. He moved closer, hesitating as he saw the files. Are those from the hospital? They're from me. I said my own archive. Every time something didn't feel right, I kept a copy. He squinted at the screen. This patient was mine. I turned what? He pointed. X, 1982. I remember him, came in with mild chest tightness, didn't fit the heart attack profile, but the chart said full cardiac workup, overnight stay. I pulled up the timeline and your orders. Ryan's brow furrowed. I never ordered any of that. We both stared at the falsified entries. I watched his face shift, confusion melting into something colder. Dread. Ryan. I said carefully, these aren't isolated. I tapped a few keys. The screen filled with names, patients from different departments, all showing the same pattern. Mild symptoms escalated to major procedures. Original notes, altered billing. Codes inflated. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. Jesus, your mom's name comes up. I said a lot. He flinched. She's on the board. She approves highly operations. She also has access to every file, every login, every signature. He didn't answer. His silence screamed louder than denial. I'm not just being framed. Ryan, this is a 10-year fraud scheme hiding beneath real medicine, and your mother is at the center. He took a step back, face pale. This can't be true, but it is, I said, and if I don't act, it'll keep happening. I clicked open a secured message draft, attached a zipped file labeled Patient X Corruption Pattern, and typed in the contact name, Special Agent Michael Greer. Then I hit send. I wanted to save my career. What I found might save hundreds of patients. The lamp on my desk cast a pale circle of light across the mess I had dragged out of the past folders. Notebooks, thumb drives with labels worn to smudges. Each one held a memory I'd pushed aside, a gut feeling I never had the time or power to chase. But now with my license suspended and my name dragged through the mud, the one thing I had in abundance was time and reason. The digital archive flickered to life on my laptop. I'd encrypted everything twice over and even now entering passwords. My fingers trembled, not from fear, from the weight of knowing what I was about to find. The first folder opened. Patient X1647 came into the ER in 2021 with mild abdominal cramps. My original diagnosis had been clear. Likely dietary sent home with instructions. But the updated file showed something else. Hospital stay exploratory surgery. $32,000 billed under my name. Except I'd been off duty that entire week. A chill crept over me. I opened another patient, X1819 nausea and fatigue. My handwritten notes, scanned and saved in a separate folder, recommended blood work and observation. But the hospital system logged a diagnosis of possible meningitis, AACT scan, spinal tap, and 2 nights stay in the private treatment wing. Again, my name appeared as the attending. Again, I had not been there. The more I searched, the more the pattern sharpened, like broken glass. Patients with routine symptoms rerouted to the private treatment wing. Diagnosis, inflated costs tripled every time the digital trail pointed to me or other doctors who'd since resigned under vague administrative terms. I reached into the bottom drawer and retrieved an old crumpled post-it note, Dr. Patel's handwriting from years ago. Watch the transfer patterns, it read. Private wings too profitable to be. Random. Back then, he'd spoken up during a staff meeting, asked why so many patients were being funneled upstairs without clear justification. 2 weeks later, he was gone. The official word, retirement, but the whispers told a different story. A knock on the door frame broke my focus. Ryan stood there, hair damp from a shower shirt, wrinkled. "You've been in here for hours." "I know," I said. "Come look at this." He approached slowly, scanning the files pulled up on my screen. "These are old cases that were tampered." I said, "Look, here's my original note, and here's what the hospital record says now. Different treatment, different diagnosis, all inflated." He frowned. "Could it be a system error?" I shook my head. "No. System error repeats for years across dozens of patients, always in the same department, always benefiting the same division." I pulled up another. "This one is yours." He stiffened. "What patient X 2002? You saw her last March. You diagnosed viral gastroenteritis, sent her home." He looked confused. "Yeah, she was..." Fine. Followed up in 2 days. Symptoms gone. I clicked into the billing report. According to this, she had 2 MRIs, a sleep study, and an overnight in the private wing. You signed off on it. "That's not possible," he whispered. "It's not just me. They're framing Ryan. They're hijacking real cases and inflating them, using our names." He sat down staring at the screen. The doubt in his eyes cracked something inside me, because I knew what he was thinking. "Your mom's involved," I said. "She's been on the board for 9. years. She's the only one with continuous access to both records and authorizations. This pattern started before I even joined the hospital. She'd never..." He began, but his voice faltered. I looked at him. "You told me last month her numbers were always too perfect, like she was gaming the system." Ryan exhaled slowly. I thought she was just efficient, that she found ways to get patients what they needed. No, I said they weren't just framing me, they were hiding a 10-year fraud scheme, and your mother is at the center. He didn't respond, just sat there torn, speechless. I opened my secure email client and attached the file I had compiled, a data set so dense and damning it made my chest ache. Dozens of patients' cross-reference notes, signature discrepancies, timestamps, access logs. I labeled it what it was. Patient X, corruption pattern. Then I sent it to the only person I knew wouldn't be afraid to follow it. Special Agent Michael Greer. I thought I was the only one she tried to destroy, but there were others, and they were watching. The scent of roasted coffee clung to the air as I stepped into Cafe Knox, the narrow Brooklyn cafe where secrets could hide between clinking mugs and whispered orders. The city outside was loud as ever, but in here, dim, hushed, anonymous. It was the kind of place where whistleblowers and federal agents could meet without drawing too many eyes. Agent Michael Greer sat in the corner booth. He didn't look like Hollywood's idea of the FBI. No sunglasses, no stiff suit, just a plain gray. Sweater, close-cropped hair, and a folder already open in front of him, he stood as I approached and gestured for me to sit. I reviewed the file you sent, he said without preamble. I ran 3 names. 2 came up in closed investigations where we couldn't find the breach until now. I slid my laptop from my bag and pulled out a small drive. I brought backups of the HealthSync records, time-stamped comparisons between original notes and altered records. You'll also find 3 audio files, 2 patient. Consultations, 1 internal meeting. You'll hear my recommendations and what was done. Instead, Greer plugged it in. You kept everything. When you're not part of the inner circle, you learn to keep receipts. I replied. I thought I was just protecting myself. But this goes deeper than I thought. He looked up at me, eyes sharp. You said the private wing was involved. They use it as a revenue sink routine. Cases get rerouted, diagnosis, inflated patients, subjected to unnecessary procedures. It's all been happening under Malene Royce's oversight. She's been careful until now. Greer leaned back slightly. We've been chasing something like this for years, but hospitals are fortresses without someone on the inside. It's impossible to penetrate. Just then the bell above the cafe door jingled again. Dr. Patel entered, a little grayer than I remembered, but unmistakable. He walked slowly. His gait measured when he saw me. Something flickered behind his eyes. Pain. Yes, but also recognition. Vindication. I wondered when. You'd finally see it, he said as he sat. I kept waiting for someone else to notice, but no one did, or no one wanted to. I'm sorry, I said quietly. I didn't realize you tried to warn us. He waved it off. Doesn't matter now. What matters is what we do next. Greer listened, as Patel confirmed what I'd suspected. In 2020, he flagged multiple billing anomalies and brought them to the board within 2 weeks. He was accused of improper patient boundary behavior. The investigation cleared him, but the damage was done. He resigned quietly. She threatened my license, he said. She used fear isolation. She made it clear I wasn't welcome. My hands clenched under the table, and now she's doing it again to me. Patel nodded. She's perfected it, Greer. Tapped the table with both your testimonies and these files. We have a solid foundation, but it's not enough. We need her unaware. We need her overconfident. Just then my phone buzzed, a message from Tessa's father. Grant Sr. lit the screen. I kept quiet in 2018. I won't again. I'll. Testify. I looked up. We're not alone anymore. Greer's jaw tightened. Then it's time to build the case. I'll move the team. Discreetly interview subpoenas, background polls, but we'll need something more public. Eventually, a distraction, something to pull her attention. I hesitated, then pulled up an email. She invited us to dinner this weekend. Says she wants to make peace, Ryan. Me, the family probably thinks I'm broken. Greer raised an eyebrow. That's bold, she has no idea. I said softly outside traffic, groaned. Past unknowing, but inside this booth, justice was beginning to stir. She poured the wine like a queen hosting her triumph, but she didn't know she'd already lost the Royce estate, glowed under the golden haze of twilight, its manicured hedges and sweeping drive bathed in an autumnal stillness that almost felt staged, the kind of silence that tried too hard. Ryan and I pulled up in silence. He hadn't said much since the night I showed him the files I didn't push tonight. He'd have to decide for himself. Malene opened the door. Herself pearls at her throat, smiles sharp as glass. Alina, she said, voice sweetened with performative grace. Come in, come in. I was hoping you'd still have the good sense to be civil. I stepped over the threshold, my heels silent on the marble, my heart thunderous in my chest. Wouldn't miss it, I said softly. Dinner with the woman who tried to erase my name. Sounds unforgettable. Ryan trailed behind me. Shoulders taut, the dining room shimmered with forced elegance. Silver cutlery aligned to perfection. Crystal glasses untouched at the head of the table. A single bottle of red wine already breathing in the decanter. Malene poured with slow deliberation, handing me a glass, like she was bestowing a favor to new beginnings. She said, I didn't touch it. Let's not toast too soon. She tilted her head, that mask of matriarchal warmth still firmly in place. I know things have been tense. But this doesn't have to end badly. Oh, I arched a brow. Malene set down her glass, folded her hands with the ease of a seasoned negotiator, dropped the resistance sign, the divorce quietly. No court, no fuss, and I'll make sure the suspension disappears. The board listens to me. You could even have a letter of reinstatement by Christmas. Think of it as a graceful exit. Ryan stiffened beside me. I leaned back in my chair. You've always underestimated me. I've always seen you clearly, she said coolly. This career isn't for women who refuse to play by the rules. You've clawed your way into a world that wasn't built for you, then acted shocked when it pushed back. I took out my phone and laid it face up on the table. One tap, a slideshow, access logs, timestamps, audit trails, screenshots of every file altered using Dr. Morrison's login. Then a paused video, still her blurred frame stepping into the server wing, unmistakable in her signature red heels. I swiped again, Greer's official letter from the bureau. Your name is... listed in connection with a developing federal inquiry into insurance fraud and medical record tampering. For the first time, her expression flickered. You're bluffing, she said tightly. The FBI doesn't investigate family squabbles. This isn't a family squabble, I replied. It's a decade-long conspiracy to defraud insurers and endanger patients for profit. You tried to destroy me and in the process exposed yourself. Her fingers curled around her wine glass knuckles, whitening. You'll regret this, she hissed. I built that hospital, I protected it, everything I did. You did for control, I cut in. Not protection, and it ends tonight. Ryan stood suddenly. His face was pale, voice hollow. Mom, how long have you been doing this? She turned to him, face softening in a flash. Sweetheart, Don't let her twist things. She's angry, emotional. You know how women can stop?" His voice cracked. "Just stop." She looked at him like a cornered animal, still proud, still dangerous but uncertain. For the first time, Ryan took a step back. His silence was no longer complicity, it was revulsion. I stood. This dinner was never about reconciliation. It was your last chance to come clean. You could have chosen dignity instead. You chose this. A knock echoed through the house. 1, 2, then 3. Malene froze. Ryan turned to the hallway. Feet slow, deliberate, he returned moments later, face ashen. "It's them," he said quietly. "The FBI." She used her power to erase my name. Now the truth erased hers. The courtroom lights were harsh, casting unforgiving angles across the polished wood and solemn faces. Early December had painted Boston in a curtain of gray, but the inside of the federal building pulsed with clarity, with exposure. Malene Royce sat stiffly at the defense table, hair dull, eyes flat. Her once pristine suit exchanged for regulation, beige. She didn't look at me as the verdict was read. She didn't look at anyone guilty on all. Counts the judge's voice cut clean through the silence. The courtroom didn't erupt. It exhaled 5 others. Administrators, physicians, coders followed her into downfall, each found complicit in a conspiracy that had spanned over a decade. Over 140 patients affected, millions siphoned through inflated billing careers, destroyed, trust shattered, and yet somehow hope remained. I stood next to Agent Greer and Dr. Patel in the hallway, outside a slant of winter light catching on the framed press release now. Pinned to the corridor wall. Whistleblower doctor exposes medical fraud empire. Dr. Patel extended his hand, the weight of years lifting slightly from his shoulders. "You did what I couldn't." I shook my head gently. "You kept the files. You told the truth. That's how we built this." He smiled, then turned away, disappearing into the sea of reporters and murmured apologies. Weeks later, in early 2024, I returned to the hospital now renamed Central Horizons Medical. Gone were the engraved plaques bearing Malene's name. Gone were the portraits of board members who turned a blind eye. I stood at the podium as the new head of emergency medicine, my voice steady as I introduced the revised transparency protocols. No more unchecked access, no more forged trails, every change logged, every billing. Justified my system. The one I had built in secret was now the gold standard Tessa had been promoted to. Department Chief Nurse and her father, Grant Sr., had returned to speak to new staff about moral courage in the quiet. After the ceremony, I made one last visit. The prison visitation room was sterile, fluorescent humming with silence. Malene sat behind the glass divider. Thinner now, but still composed, she picked up the receiver without a word, her eyes narrowing slightly as I did the same. "You didn't have to come," she said, finally. "I know a beat. You hated me because I controlled him." I met her eyes' even, steady number. "I pied you because you thought that was love." She looked away, jaw tightening. "I didn't come to gloat," I said. "Just to tell you, you didn't destroy me. You revealed me, and maybe you helped fix something neither of us could see clearly until it broke." I stood and left before she could respond back at the hospital. I walked through the ear clipboard in hand. Staff nodded as I passed, not with fear, not with forced respect, but with something quiet and steady trust as I approached the new intake wing. A young doctor intercepted me, nervous eyes bright with uncertainty. "Dr. Tran?" she asked. "How did you survive all?" This? I paused, watching the bustling hallway monitors beeped. Gurneys rolled, life real and fragile moved on. I smiled by never letting someone else write my ending. When the truth finally emerged from beneath layers of lies, it didn't shout. It dismantled the woman who once silenced others with power and influence was now just another name on a courtroom docket. Justice long delayed, struck not with vengeance, but with clarity. A reminder that silence enables corruption, but courage dismantles it, because in the end, no fortress of deceit can withstand the steady knock of truth. Months later, spring painted the city in soft colors, and the hospital, once a symbol of silent corruption, now pulsed with something different. It wasn't just a new name on the facade. The air itself had changed, the atmosphere of something restarted, something finally clean. The corridors, once heavy with distrust, now vibrated with hope. Young doctors, nurses, and residents, many of whom would never know the dark backstage we once faced, passed me with genuine smiles, not of fear, but of respect. With every chart opened, every diagnosis made, I knew the legacy we were leaving behind was not one of fear, but of responsibility. The old golden plaques bearing the names of those who silently upheld the fraud had been removed. The portraits of the old board members were taken down. In their place, new words were engraved at the hospital's entrance. Here, truth is the first step to healing. The system I helped build isn't perfect. Nothing is, but it is transparent, accountable, human. A system where ethics matter more than numbers, where greed will find no shelter. Sometimes I still receive looks, a mixture of admiration and disbelief, from those who know the whole story. Others, more discreet, leave notes in my office, tucked between papers or sent via email. Thank you for not giving up. You showed us that courage saves lives too. Today we saved a patient because someone believed the truth was worth the fight. These words don't carry the glory of a title, nor the fleeting nature of applause. They carry what I always sought, the certainty that I didn't fight in vain. And as for the woman who tried to destroy me, Malene Royce is now just another name lost among so many others in the archives of justice, a reminder that power without character is nothing more than the facade of an inevitable collapse. Ryan and I went our separate ways. He needed distance to find his own answers, and I respected that. Not with sadness, but with the maturity of someone who understands that some losses are also liberations. When people ask me if it was worth it, I think of the patients who were spared, of the futures that won't be destroyed by the shadows of blind ambition. I think of the days I doubted, the days I feared, but never gave up. Truth doesn't scream. It persists. It seeps through the cracks of lies and patiently dismantles everything built upon silence. And in the end, no house of cards can withstand the force of a single voice determined not to be silenced. Because in the end, the greatest victory isn't destroying the enemy. It's rebuilding what they tried to take from you: dignity, truth, and the courage to move forward.